What if I told you that a dragon, disguised as a frail child who would forever alter the course of history, was born deep within the foggy valleys of ancient China? This is the untold life story of the legendary Chinese dragon, starting from its very first breath and taking us from a shimmering egg protected by spirits to the skies above empires, long before men carved kingdoms into the earth and named them as their own. The skies and waters belonged to beings far older than memory itself. In the eastern lands where mountains pierced the clouds and rivers ran like silver veins across the soil, the ancient spirits whispered of a prophecy. A dragon would be born who carried both the grace of heaven and the might of the sea. This was no ordinary creature, but a guardian destined to shape the balance between mortals and the divine dot in a hidden valley wrapped in perpetual mist, where bamboo forests swayed like emerald waves and cranes cried at dawn. The egg of the dragon lay cradled in a nest of polished stones and flowing water. The egg shimmered with hues of jade and sapphire, pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of the earth itself, the guardians of the valley fox spirits, river sprites, and silent mountains watched over it for centuries. Time to them was like the drifting of clouds, slow, endless, patient. When the egg finally cracked, the world seemed to hold its breath. A sound unlike thunder but heavier than silence rippled through the valley. From within emerged a small creature, scaled but soft, its body still wet with the dew of creation. Its horns were no larger than a sparrow's beak, its whiskers trembling, like threads of silk in the wind. Yet even in this fragile state, its eyes gleamed with the reflection of galaxies, as though it remembered skies it had not yet flown. The newborn dragon's first breath released a mist that curled into shapes of serpents and birds, vanishing into the morning air. The rivers brightened as if welcoming their kin. The bamboo leaves glistened as if kissed by heavenly dew. All of nature bent gently toward this child, acknowledging the arrival of something destined to be greater than any emperor's crown. The villagers in the distant foothills spoke of it in hushed tones. Fishermen claimed the waters of the great river had turned warmer that day, filled with an abundance of fish. Farmers swore the soil had grown richer overnight, promising bountiful harvests. And the elders, their faces lined with wisdom and fear, whispered, "A dragon has been born. A child of heaven walks among us." But the child dragon, unaware of prophecy or burden, curled into its nest and slept. Its small chest rose and fell like a tide, each breath shaping the rhythm of the valley. Dreams filled its slumber, visions of soaring through endless skies, swimming across oceans that touched the edge of the world, and standing tall among mountains that crumbled beneath its claws. Thus began the life of the dragon, not as a terror of men nor as a beast of destruction, but as a fragile spirit, a newborn whose destiny was written in the stars long before the first human spoke a word. The valley became its cradle, the rivers its lullabies, and the heavens its silent guardians. Little did the world know that this child would one day rise beyond myth and legend, weaving itself into the very fabric of history. The days after the dragon's birth passed like songs carried by the wind-soft, fleeting, yet unforgettable. Though small in size, the child grew quickly, its scales hardening into shimmering plates of jade and pearl, reflecting sunlight like liquid fire. Its horns sprouted slowly, curving upward with an elegance that hinted at the majesty it would one day embody. In the hidden valley, time moved differently. Seasons seemed to linger in honor of the young dragon. Spring's blossoms clung longer to the branches, as if reluctant to fall. Summer's rains grew gentler, nourishing the bamboo groves. Even winter snow appeared softer, blanketing the earth like a cradle for the sleeping beast. The valley was not simply a home, it was an extension of the dragon itself. The child was curious beyond measure. It chased the flight of butterflies, sending bursts of warm mist from its nostrils that made the tiny creatures dance in circles. It splashed in the river, its tail whipping waves that glistened under the sun. Fish would leap playfully at its presence, as though honoring their kin of water. At night, it stared endlessly at the stars, its young mind stirred by visions it could not understand of palaces in the clouds, of thunder rolling like drums of war, of oceans deeper than time. But with growth came hunger, and with hunger came the first lesson of survival. The spirits of the valley had long protected it, whispering to the winds and guiding the rivers to feed the young dragon. Yet there were days when the child had to fend for itself. It learned to dive beneath the rushing current, snapping its silver-scaled carp with teeth that grew sharp each moon. It learned to coil its body like a serpent, striking with speed and grace. Each attempt was clumsy at first, water churning, tail thrusting, jaws missing their mark, but soon the dragon's movements became poetry, as natural as the river's own song. It was during one of these hunts that the dragon first encountered humans. From the valley's edge, a group of children from a nearby village had wandered to far while gathering wild herbs. Their laughter echoed faintly, carried by the wind, until it reached the dragon's keen ears. Curious, it slithered closer, its long body weaving between bamboo stalks, eyes glimmering like lanterns in the shade. The children gasped when they saw it. At first, they froze, their baskets clattering to the ground. Legends told by their elders spoke of dragons as gods, bringers of rain and prosperity, but also as punishers of arrogance and greed. Yet what stood before them was not the towering beast of stories. It was a young creature, barely taller than a man, with scales shining softly and whiskers quivering like willow branches. One boy, braver or perhaps more foolish than the rest, stepped forward. In his hand, he held a persimmon, bright and ripe. With trembling fingers, he placed it on the ground and pushed it gently toward the dragon. The creature tilted its head, nostrils flaring. For a long moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, with a surprisingly delicate motion, the dragon picked up the fruit and swallowed it whole. The children burst into nervous laughter, their fear melting into wonder. They whispered to one another, calling it Xiaolong, little dragon. 4 weeks after, they returned, leaving small offerings of fruit, rice cakes, and polished stones. And each time, the dragon grew bolder, drawing closer, curling round them like a playful cat, releasing warm mists that wrapped the children in gentle fog. But not all humans saw with innocent eyes. One evening, as the children returned home, their parents followed the trail and witnessed the creature with their own gaze. Fear gripped them. The elders, wise but weary, warned that such a being was not to be treated as a pet or friend. A dragon is heaven's envoy, they said, and heaven does not share its children lightly. Word spread quickly through the villages at the river's edge. Some bowed in reverence, praying for rain and protection. Others sharpened their spears, fearing that one day the beast would grow into a monster too great to control. And in the palace of a nearby kingdom, whispers reached the ear of a lord whose greed for power knew no end. The dragon, still young and blissfully unaware of the storm gathering round it, continued to grow. Its wings, once no more than soft ridges on its back, began to stretch like banners of silk. Its voice deepened, resonating like distant thunder when it roared. The child of mist and river was becoming something more, something greater. Yet in its heart remained the memory of laughter, the laughter of human children who once offered a simple fruit without fear. That memory would shape the dragon as much as scales, claws, or destiny. The valley could cradle it only for so long. Beyond the mountains lay empires, armies, and kings. Beyond the rivers stretched oceans that called to its blood, and above, the heavens waited, watching silently for the day when the dragon would claim the skies, the child was no longer merely a creature of myth. It was becoming a force the world could not ignore. As the years passed, the valley no longer seemed vast enough for the dragon. What once felt like an endless cradle of rivers, forests, and mist had become a garden it had outgrown. Its body stretched longer than 10 men laid end to end, and its wings, though rarely used now, cast shadows over the bamboo groves like drifting clouds. The child who once chased butterflies now stirred storms with the mere beat of its tail. The first sign of its awakening power came not from rage, but from sorrow. One spring, the children from the village, those who had once fed it persimmons and rice cakes, ceased to come. The dragon waited by the valley's edge, coiling in the mist, its golden eyes scanning the trails. Days passed, then weeks, and no laughter echoed through the bamboo. At last, curiosity overcame patience, and the dragon crept from its sanctuary. The village it remembered was silent, the air heavy with despair. Crops had withered, fields cracked like broken porcelain. The river that once nourished the people had thinned to a trickle. Choked by drought, the children were there, but thinner now, their faces pale with hunger. When they saw the dragon, their eyes lit up with the same innocent wonder as before, but their parents pulled them away, bowing low and muttering prayers, too afraid to approach. The dragon felt something stir within an ache, a need to heal. It slithered to the riverbank and dipped its snout into the dying waters. From deep in its chest came a sound it had never made before, the resonant hum that shook the ground. Mist rolled from its nostrils, thick and luminous, rising into the sky. The clouds above darkened, twisting like silk banners in the wind, until at last the heavens split open wherein it was not a gentle shower, but a downpour that roared against the rooftops, flooding the fields, filling the parched soil with life. The villagers gasped and fell to their knees, some weeping, others shouting, "Long live the dragon! Heaven has blessed us." Children danced in the mud, their laughter returning, and for the first time the dragon understood. It carried within its body the breath of storms, the voice of rivers, the will of the heavens themselves. But where awe grows, so too does fear. Word of the miracle spread beyond the valley. Messengers carried tales to the palaces of kings and the courts of lords. Some called it a divine savior, the river god's child, a spirit who would protect the land. Others whispered of danger. What power can summon rain, can summon destruction to dwell? What feeds can also starve? What heals can kill? The greedy lord who had once heard of the dragon's existence now became restless. He dreamed of harnessing such a creature, binding it to his will. With a dragon at his side, he could command the skies, crush rival kingdoms, and reign as emperor over all under heaven. Unaware of these schemes, the dragon continued to test its powers. It discovered that when it stretched its wings and leapt into the air, the winds bent to its command. It flew not with clumsy flaps, but with a serpent's grace, weaving through clouds, dancing with thunder. Lightning licked at its scales, yet did not burn. Instead, it illuminated its body with a crown of fire. At night, it practiced weaving currents of water into sheep spirals, waves, even serpents of liquid that leapt and dissolved back into the river. These acts were not just play, they were instinct, fragments of memory etched into its bloodline. Each thunderclap, each rushing wave whispered of ancestors who had once served as bridges between heaven and earth in dreams. The dragon saw them, colossal beings coiled round. Mountains, their roars splitting seas, their shadows stretching across empires, and always, in the background, a voice lingered soft, commanding, eternal. You are ours, you are heaven's. Yet within its heart, the dragon remembered the taste of persimmon offered by a trembling hand. It remembered laughter, innocence, warmth, Though the heavens claimed it, a part of the dragon longed to remain tethered to the earth, to the fragile mortals who had once seen it not as a god, nor as a monster, but simply as a friend, the world, however, would not let it stay innocent for long. One night, torches flickered at the valley's edge. Men in armor crept through the bamboo, their banners hidden, their weapons gleaming with hunger. They did not come to worship. They came to capture. The dragon's slumber was broken by the clash of steel against stone, by shouts muffled in the mist. It rose from its nest, eyes burning like twin suns. For the first time in its life, the creature felt the sting of betrayal. The child of mist and river was no longer a secret. Its powers, once a gift, had become a prize men would kill to possess, and in that moment, beneath the storming sky, the dragon would face a choice: to remain the gentle spirit of the valley, or to become the terror kings feared in their dreams. The valley that had once known only the songs of rivers and the whisper of bamboo now echoed with the sound of men. The intruders came like shadows, their armor dull to hide from the moonlight, their banners furled to silence the beating wind. Yet no matter how quietly they crept, their hearts thundered with greed, and the valley itself felt the intrusion. The dragon awoke. Its slitted eyes opened to the glow of torchlight flickering between the trees. It lifted its head. Slowly, whiskers twitching as it inhaled the acrid scent of fire and steel. The once playful child within it trembled in confusion. But something older, something written deep in its blood stirred with anger. The soldiers moved in formation, nets woven of iron, threads stretched between them. Their commander, a man whose ambition eclipsed his fear, raised his hand, and the men advanced. They believed they were hunting an animal. They did not yet realize they had trespassed upon a storm. The dragon rose from its nest, towering now above them, scales glittering like 1,000 emeralds under firelight. Its roar shattered the silence, rolling through the valley like a wave that made even the mountains shiver. Birds erupted from the bamboo in frantic flight. The soldiers faltered, some dropping their weapons, but the commander's voice cut through their fear. Do not falter. It is but a beast. Capture it, and glory shall be ours. At first, the dragon held back. It coiled in the mist, eyes wide, trying to understand. These were not the children who once offered fruit. These were men with blades, faces hardened by greed. It lowered its head, letting out a deep growl of warning. Not yet a sentence, but men, blind to mercy, rushed forward. The first spear struck its flank, glancing off the hardened scales but leaving a sting that burned like betrayal. Another spear followed, then another, until the air was thick with flying steel. The dragon recoiled, pain and shock flashing in its eyes. Its chest tightened, its breath quickened. The child of mist was cornered then. Instinct claimed it. The dragon reared back, and from its throat erupted a torrent of searing mist. Not fire, but a scalding cloud that boiled through the air. The front line of soldiers screamed, their armor sizzling as the steam seared flesh beneath. Panic rippled through the ranks. Nets were dropped, torches fell, and the bamboo grove lit with sudden flame. The commander roared in defiance. Charging forward with his blade, he swung at the dragon's leg. Sparks flying as steel struck jade-like scales. The dragon turned its golden eyes upon him, eyes filled not only with fury, but with sorrow, for a moment. Man and beast locked gazes, two wills colliding, one driven by ambition, the other by wounded innocence. With a single sweep of its tail, the commander was hurled into the air, his body crashing lifelessly against the stones. Silence followed. The surviving soldiers fled, stumbling into the night, abandoning their weapons, and dead alike. The valley was left, scout fires smoldering in the bamboo, blood-staining the earth. The air heavy with smoke and sorrow, the dragon lowered itself slowly, its massive body trembling. Its heart raced with a rhythm it had never known before, the rhythm of battle. It looked to the river, its reflection staring back, no longer a child of innocence, but a creature of both awe and terror. In the days that followed, the valley grew quiet. The villagers dared not return, fearful that their prayers had birthed not a savior but a wrathful god. Children no longer laughed in its shadow. Offerings no longer appeared by the riverbank. Where once there was companionship, there was only distance and silence. The dragon wandered, restless, haunted by what it had done, the power that flowed through its body. The storms it could summon, the rivers it could command, these were no longer gifts of wonder. They were weapons, and in human eyes, weapons were never left unclaimed. Far beyond the valley, kings and warlords spoke in hushed councils. Some dreamed of taming a beast, others of slaying it before it grew too strong. And in the heavens above, the spirits who had whispered at its birth now watched with solemn silence. The dragon's destiny had shifted. It was no longer only a guardian of rivers or a playmate of children. It was becoming something greater, something darker a force men would fear, worship, or try to destroy. On that night of spears, the child of mist had taken its first step into legend. The valley had been both cradle and cage. For years, it had nurtured the dragon, sheltering it from the eyes of greedy men and teaching it the quiet rhythm of rivers, the whisper of winds, and the patience of mountains. Yet the fires of that night, the blood, the terror, and the taste of power left a mark upon the young dragon's soul. The valley could no longer contain it. One dawn, as mist curled like silver snakes along the riverbank, the dragon stretched its immense wings. The wind caught them, lifting the creature effortlessly into the sky. It was the first true flight beyond the valley, and the sensation was intoxicating. Clouds embraced its scales, and the sun gleamed like a jewel upon its back. The rivers below shimmered in greeting, bending their currents to reflect the glory of the skyborn creature. For the first time, the dragon saw the world beyond the bamboo forests and hidden streams. Mountains rose like jagged crowns, forests stretched like oceans of green, and human cities vast, teeming and unaware of the heavens above spread across the land. The child of mist and river had grown into a force both beautiful and terrifying, a living bridge between earth and sky. The first city it encountered was one ruled by a young emperor, ambitious and restless, yet wise beyond his years. From the palace's highest tower, the emperor gazed at the sky, seeing a shadow that eclipsed the sun. Word spread quickly among his courtiers. A dragon, as ancient as the legends whispered at bedtime, had arrived over the city. The dragon hovered over the rooftops, its golden eyes scanning the streets below. People ran, some in awe, others in fear, and children gazed upward, recognizing in the sky the spirit of the stories they had been told. With a gentle sweep of its wings, the dragon stirred the wind, carrying the scent of rain and mist through the alleyways. Crops in nearby fields seemed to straighten as though standing to salute it. Water from the aqueducts shimmered in its reflection. The emperor, though cautious, dared to step outside. Draped in robes of silk and gold, he faced the dragon with a mixture of fear and reverence. He spoke not as a king commanding subjects, but as a man seeking understanding. "I have heard the tales of your birth, of rivers bending and clouds obeying your will. Tell me, are you friend or foe?" The dragon tilted its head, considering him. Its voice, deep and resonant, rumbled like distant thunder. Words were not needed. Its presence alone spoke volumes. And yet, for the first time, the dragon allowed a single thought to reach the human mind. "I am what the world has made me, yet I choose what I shall become." In the days that followed, the dragon tested the limits of its power. It soared over mountains, learning to bend the wind and call lightning without harm to the innocent. It dived into rivers, sculpting waters into majestic forms, crafting serpents, and whirlpools that shimmered like living jade. It discovered that the heavens themselves seemed to answer to its heartbeat. Storms writhed when it roared, and the sun painted its wings with gold when it rose above the clouds. Yet, in each encounter with humans, the dragon felt both awe and sorrow. Cities hailed it as a protector, offering tribute and prayers, while others armed themselves with weapons forged in fear. The balance of admiration and terror was delicate. And the dragon realized that the world it had entered was far more complex than the quiet valley it had known. The spirits of its ancestors began to whisper in dreams, guiding it. They spoke of empires that would rise and fall, of mortals whose ambition could either honor or destroy the balance of the world. The dragon listened, and in its heart it felt the weight of choice, to intervene in human affairs, to protect or punish, or to remain a distant watcher in the skies. As the sun set behind distant mountains, the dragon perched atop a cliff overlooking a great river delta. It gazed at the horizon, wings folded yet trembling with anticipation. The child of mist and river had become more than legend. It was a living force, a guardian and a harbinger, suspended between heaven and earth. And somewhere beyond the clouds, the whispers continued, calling it toward destinies the dragon had yet to imagine, wars it would witness, alliances it would forge, and challenges that would test the very limits of its power. The journey beyond the valley had begun, and with each beat of its wings, the world below grew smaller, while the realm of the heavens opened wider. The dragon had flown beyond its valley for the first time, and with each passing day, it discovered a world of beauty, wonder, and danger. Mountains sprawled like ancient scars across the earth. Rivers carved valleys deeper than any imagination could reach, and human cities thrived with life, ambition, and the constant hum of conflict. Among these cities, kingdoms clashed, armies marched, and men dreamed of glory, but none dreamed of the force that now moved above them. It began with a distant war. One emperor, driven by greed and fear, sought to conquer a neighboring kingdom. He amassed tens of thousands of soldiers, steel glinting under the sun, banners flapping like the wings of death. Smoke from torches and fires marked their march, signaling destruction to all who dared resist. The dragon watched from the skies, scales shimmering in sunlight, wings cutting through clouds with effortless grace. From above, it saw the human struggle in detail, soldiers trembling before their commanders, horses straining against leather reins, catapults hurling death with practiced precision. It felt the fear, the courage, the raw intensity of mortal ambition, and within its heart, a decision began to form. It descended silently, the air rippling with unseen currents. When it landed between the armies, the ground trembled beneath its claws. Its roar split the sky like lightning striking stone, and the soldiers froze, caught between awe and terror. The dragon's golden eyes swept over them, seeing not as a predator sees prey, but as a being who understood both potential and consequence. Then came the first display of true power. With a sweep of its wings, gusts ripped through the battlefield, hurling men and debris alike. Rivers of water rose from the nearby stream, twisting into serpentine forms that blocked advancing troops and tore catapults from their mounts. Lightning danced across its scales, striking only where the dragon willed it, leaving the innocent unharmed, but shaking the arrogance from men who thought themselves invincible. The commanders fell to their knees, some weeping, others bowing, recognizing the impossible. This was no beast to be slain, no trophy to be claimed. The dragon's presence alone shifted the tide of battle. Kingdoms that had trained for years found themselves at the mercy of a single being, and for the first time, Humans saw the delicate balance between wonder and fear. Yet, even in the midst of power, the dragon felt the pull of its valley, of simpler days spent chasing butterflies and swimming in rivers with children who had once welcomed it without fear. Its choices weighed heavily, to intervene and protect, or to leave men to their own devices and let history unfold with its inevitable cruelty. Throughout these conflicts, the dragon discovered the extent of its abilities. Its roar could summon storms. Its wings could whip gale-force winds strong enough to tear entire battalions apart. It could command water, shaping it into walls, serpents, or torrents that obeyed its thought. And yet, it also learned restraint, knowing that every strike left an imprint on the world it was sworn to guard. Word of the dragon spread across continents. Some saw it as a god, descending from heaven to deliver justice or vengeance. Others feared it as a harbinger of ruin, a living storm that could level cities in moments of anger. Traders spoke of it in hushed tones, storytellers wove legends round its name, and children dreamed of its scales and wings, imagining themselves soaring beside it through endless skies. But with fame came scrutiny. Emperors, kings, and generals alike began to plan, not to worship, but to control. They sent envoys with gold and jewels, offering alliances and tribute. Others attempted cunning traps, believing a dragon could be outwitted. The creature learned quickly. Human ambition was relentless, and it was often fueled by fear. In the quiet moments, above the clouds or beside a calm river, the dragon pondered its path. Power was not merely strength, but responsibility. The world it now touched was complex, fragile, and beautiful. Its wings carried it across realms. Its roar commanded storms. Yet it remembered the valley, the children, the laughter, and the innocence that once defined it. The dragon realized it was no longer just a guardian of rivers or a playmate of mortals. It was a force that could shape empires, decide the fates of kings, and remind humanity of both the wonder and terror of the world they inhabited. As night fell and stars mirrored its golden eyes, the dragon took to the sky, wings stretched wide. Somewhere below, battles raged, kingdoms quivered, and humans whispered its name with awe and fear. And above it all, the dragon soared, fully aware that its legend had only just begun and that the choices it made would echo through time, as enduring as rivers, as eternal as the heavens. The dragon had flown across mountains, rivers, and kingdoms, its wings carrying not only its massive form, but the weight of destiny itself. Years had passed since it left the valley. And yet every flight reminded it of the place of its birth. The rivers that sang lullabies, the bamboo forests that swayed in harmony, and the children who had once offered simple gifts without fear. Those memories were treasures it carried silently beneath scales that now shone with the wisdom of centuries. The world of men had changed as well. Kingdoms rose and fell in tremors of ambition and war. Emperors who once sought to control the dragon had either died in their arrogance or bowed before it, leaving offerings and pledges. The dragon had learned the delicate balance of power, to strike when necessary, to protect when needed, and to withdraw when mercy served the greater good. One evening, a great conflagration spread through a human city, the result of a war that had spiraled beyond control. The dragon descended from the sky, wings cutting the wind with measured precision. Rivers of water lifted from distant streams, encircling the city in a protective embrace. Flames hissed and fizzled as torrents of liquid collided with fire, sparing the innocent and scaring away the cruel. The people below stared in awe and fearsome weeping, some praying, or witnessing the presence of something beyond mortal comprehension. The dragon landed upon the highest tower, its claws gripping stone, eyes glowing like molten gold. It gazed over the city, sensing every heartbeat, every whisper of fear, every flicker of hope. It spoke not with words, but with a presence that commanded reverence. Mortals fell silent, understanding in their bones that here was a force older than any dynasty, older than the mountains, and older than the rivers themselves, and in that moment the dragon remembered the valley, the children, the laughter, its enormous heart, capable of storms and floods, beat with a gentleness that men could scarcely imagine. Power and wisdom, destruction and protection, they existed side by side in its being. Legends tell that the dragon then rose into the heavens, carrying with it a final gift, a vision of harmony. It showed humans that the earth and sky were not realms to conquer, but to respect, that strength without compassion leads only to ruin, and that even a creature of godlike power can remember the innocence of a child. From that day forth, the dragon became a symbol, whispered in stories, sung in poems, painted on temple walls, and revered as the guardian of balance. Kings no longer sought to chain it, armies no longer feared its wrath without reason, and the rivers and skies continued to sing in harmony with its spirit. And though the dragon eventually disappeared beyond the horizon, soaring into clouds where no human could follow, it left a mark upon the world that would never fade. Mortals remembered its kindness, feared its fury, and celebrated its wisdom. The child of mist and river, once born in a hidden valley, had become eternal, not merely a myth, not merely a force of nature, but a legend, the dragon of eternal rivers, whose story would flow through time as endlessly as the waters it had once played in, and as infinite as the skies it now called home. And so, in every storm, in every glimmer of sunlight on a river, in every whisper of the wind through bamboo, those who listened closely could still feel its presence. The dragon had grown beyond its beginnings, yet it carried its past with it, a reminder that even the mightiest among us can be shaped by the innocence of childhood, the whispers of nature, and the choices made in the quietest moments of life. The legend was fulfilled.